This video will be covering Chapter 8, the cost of living. Specifically, the Big Mac Index is an example of purchasing power indexes, implied exchange rates, and how to tell if currency is overvalued or undervalued, and how to adjust per capita depending on if it's undervalued or overvalued. So, looking at the first slide, this is an example of a purchasing power index. What you're looking at is the Big Mac Index. And the Big Mac Index originates from the United States. So as you can see by that highlighted picture, the United States there's no green or red bar because that's the base. And for example, in a place like Switzerland, the Big Mac is more expensive in Switzerland. So that's why it looks like that with that little green bar. So I'm going to be going over an example of the Big Mac Index. So the normal implied exchange rate is the local currency divided by the base currency. So for this example, we're going to be calculating it for a Big Mac in China. And in China, a Big Mac costs 24 yuan. And in the US, it costs $536, at least for this example. So in order to get the implied exchange rate, we would take the 24 yuan and divide it by the 536 US dollars. And that comes out to 448 yuan per US dollar. And that is your implied exchange rate. And now we're going to calculate what the real price of a Big Mac in China would be. And to do that, you take the local currency and divide it by the official exchange rate. And so for this example, our official exchange rate that the government gives us is 7.3 yuan per US dollar. And so to figure out the real price of a Big Mac in China, we would divide the 24 yuan divided by the 7.3 yuan, which is the official exchange rate. So the real price of a Big Mac in China is the implied exchange rate divided by the official exchange rate. And as you can see right there, that number comes out to $329, which means that's the real price of a Big Mac in China in US dollars. And from that, we want to know, is China's currency over or undervalued? And from this, we can tell that it's undervalued because one US dollar in China would buy more in China than it would in the US. And you can tell that because the price of a Big Mac in China is $3.29, and the base price of a Big Mac in the US is $5.36. So a Big Mac is cheaper in China than it would be in the US. And for this example, we're going to be trying to calculate a price level adjustment. So a price level adjustment is figuring out how much the local currency is undervalued or overvalued. So this is the equation for price level adjustments. There's two different ones that you can use. The first one is the price in China minus the price in the US divided by the price in the US times 100. And that's just for this specific example. If you were doing it for a different country, you would do the price of the country you're in minus the price of the base country divided by the price of the base country times 100. The other formula we can use is the implied rate minus the official rate divided by the official rate times 100. And as you can see here, we will take the numbers we found in the previous example. So the real price of a Big Mac in China is $3.29. We'll take that, subtract the base price in the US, which is $5.36, and then divide by that number again, $5.36, and multiply it by 100, and we get negative 38.66, and that is a percentage. So that means that China's currency is undervalued by 38.66%. And for this example, we'll be calculating the purchasing power parity of adjusted GDP per capita. And that formula right there at the very top, as you can see, is GDP per capita times 100 divided by 100 plus the price level adjusted. And that price level adjusted is what we just found in the previous slide, the negative 38.66%. So now we're going to do the example, and we are given that the current per capita GDP of China is $12,814. So we'll take that number, put it at the very beginning, and then multiply that by the 100 divided by 100 minus the 38.66%, which is how much the economy is undervalued, and that comes out to $20,891.09. And that number right there is that's the real GDP per capita in terms of US dollars for China. All right, that concludes this video. Thank y'all for watching. This is Cost of Living, Chapter 8.